Press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from Newslaundry.
Hello everyone and welcome to this balmy afternoon. Well, it's balmy in Delhi at least. We are going to today talk about a very vast subject, I must say. The title of the session is Indian Economy and COVID, Insights from Data. I'll explain the second part later. But about Indian economy and COVID, I think it's a good time to sort of hold a session like this where people can actually interact with experts like we have here and also figure out where we are placed right now as a country, as a society, and what is coming next. I think that is one of the big focus area that we are going to keep. And of course, when you're talking about the economy, it's an extremely giant subject. So I am going to sort of keep it more or less a free run. Here's how the session will go. The introductions will happen first. I will ask each speaker to introduce themselves. Then we will have some opening remarks about the state of our economy, COVID, or anything that they want to add to the topic. Then Dr. Ashwini Chhatre from ISB is going to tell us about this amazing data portal that he has started, which everybody of us can use to figure out what is the sort of situation we are in using different indicators. I think you'll enjoy that a lot. And after that, we're going to directly open up for questions. So you can use the Q&A thing, which is below to ask your questions. The chat is separate. Don't ask your questions on chat. You can chat with people on chat, but don't ask questions there. Ask them on Q&A so that I can then curate it according to when they come, who is to answer it. Yeah, and you can start leaving questions right from the beginning. There is no bar to that. Okay, so the topic again is economy and COVID. So first, I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves one by one. First up, Prerna.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show. Very excited to be here. I'm Prerna Mukharya, and I run a data firm that works specifically in the impact space. We're called Outline India. And I think this conversation is particularly pertinent to the kind of work we do because we do a lot of on-ground work. We work specifically with policymakers, with decision makers, with think tanks and not-for-profits. And we help them quantify the impact of their work, or as has been happening, try and quantify the disruption that has been caused as a result of COVID-19. We recently launched a tech product that's called Track Your Metrics, wherein we're trying to automate social assessments, automate social audits, and bring funders and not-for-profits in conversation. Thank you for having me.
Prerna here is going to basically deal with the impact part of it, I think, because you have been tracking a lot of sort of what social audits are. We would like to know about that a little bit as well when we come to you.
Absolutely.
Then Paojel, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I am Paojel Chaoba. I am from Manipur. I work with the Frontier Manipur, and it's very nice to see all the people over here. Have to have a very good time. Learn so much from you.
Yes. Now, Nitali.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mitali Mukherjee. I'm business editor at The Wire. I was formerly stocks editor at CNBC TV 18. So a lot of my life was spent tracking equity markets. I think, Meghnad, on the point you made about never has it been more important to talk about the economy. That time was actually 6 quarters back. Now is the time to talk about how to fix all of this. But I think what's different about our conversation, as I'm sure all of us will gather to discuss, is that for the first time in many decades, this is not an internal issue where the banking system collapsed or the finance system collapsed, but it's something external that has hit all of us. And I'd be fascinated to know what data throws up. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, basically everything collapsed. So what happens next? That's what we'll talk about. And Sukirat ji?
Hi everybody, I'm Sukirat. I'm based in Jalandhar. I'm a Punjabi writer. I write fiction, but I also write 2 columns for Punjabi Tribune as well as a daily called Daily Nawa Zamana. And usually I write on socio-political issues. As a writer, I'm an observant of people and what is happening around me. I mean, I like to sort of poke my nose into other people's lives. So I think that this is going to be a very interesting session for me because I have certain observations to make, and I would
Yes.
also like to hear from various people how people around them are dealing with it. I mean, besides,
Exactly.
of course, we talk about the economy too, but economy affects all of us. Thank you.
Yeah. So Paojel is an investigative journalist. He hadn't mentioned that, but he and Sukirat ji are going to tell us a little bit about what is happening in the profession of journalism as well and media space because of this pandemic. I think you guys would be the best people to tell us about that a little bit. So to begin with, I would like some opening remarks. First, I'll start with Paojel actually. Paojel, can you tell us what you think about this whole situation that we are in today, economy-wise and just personally?
Meghnad, I
Yes.
would like to speak from my perspective
Yes.
and in regard beyond the chicken neck, especially the
Yes.
northeast.
Yes. Yes. Go on.
And in Manipur, as you're aware that we are basically a hill area.
Hmm.
And the way that we live here, we are on an imported GDP, you might say. Because whatever is coming in in the form of subsidies in both the secondary and the tertiary sectors and all that. I'm not an economist also, but from my own personal experience, I feel that what we are focusing now is on our primary needs here in the Northeast region, especially
Hmm.
in my state. But surprisingly, people are having a very, what do you say, a normal time,
Hmm.
especially people in the rural areas, in the villages, in the
Hmm.
hill districts. Because people, we have been deprived of so many things, especially in Manipur. We have been deprived of our health essential items, the PDS, medical infrastructure, you name it. There's only a few things that I'm trying to highlight over here. Because the people, most of the rural people, that will account for around like 86% of the state population. They live in the hills, in the rural areas, where there is a lot of space, and Manipur basically is like 98%, 90% hill area only. So the farmers, when COVID comes in, they are, last time I visited one of these hill districts during this pandemic, what they told me was like, we do not have much of a difference.
Hmm.
Why? We are not.
So you're saying that because we are so focused on, we are now focused on primary needs and maybe Manipur and rural areas of Manipur, we're already focused on that. So maybe that's why the difference is in there.
That is basically what is the difference between Manipur, some of the states in the northeast,
Hmm.
except for Assam,
Hmm.
and the rest of the Indian economy. That is a whole different chapter. There's a whole vast sea of difference over here.
Right.
Because we don't have these major companies over here, Tatas, Birlas, Goenkas. We do not discuss most of the other issues, the economic part of it. But what we are here is trying to sustain ourselves with our rural economy in the
This is a
primary
very
sector.
interesting thing that you have just brought up. Maybe I don't know if how I'm putting it is correct, but places that haven't industrialized so fast as opposed to other, say, townships or like other areas, urban areas, are seeing a very different picture of what the effect the pandemic had rather than what we are seeing in the cities. I think I'll bring in Mitali here. And Mitali, can you please quickly tell us your opening thoughts?
On the economy, Meghnad?
Yes, on the economy. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try and make it really concise because,
Yes.
as you said, it's a super vast,
Yes.
topic. The short answer is, Meghnad, it's very, very messy.
Yeah.
The extension of that short answer would be that unfortunately we're in more of a mess than many of our peers. this is a problem that we've had for many quarters now on the manufacturing side, as you said. But I think what's different about this time, as we were discussing, is that this has happened from an outward experience. So you're dealing with a health crisis along with an economic crisis. And I think the other big problem, Meghnad, is how over the next couple of months, we're all going to feel this at a very granular personal level. A slowdown was sometimes a very sort of notional idea, saying, okay, GDP dips, what does that mean? But the meaning of that is very real this time round, because it has meant furloughs, it has meant job losses, it has meant for people who might be watching this and are going to graduate from ISB, not getting the kind of options that they would, not getting the salaries that they would. It has also meant a big dent to the one space in India that was functioning. As Paojel pointed out, agriculture has largely held out, even though that's, it's debatable what it means for farmers versus agriculture doing well. Those are two very separate issues. But I think problem...
Apart from agriculture, there's an entire supply chain that comes after this, which might have...
No, what I mean is that realizations may not necessarily be that great for a farmer. So, agriculture may do okay, but does this mean the farmers have a better life? I think that there's a question mark to that. And the biggest impact, Meghnad, is the fact that the one thing holding up for India was our services sector. People were still traveling, people were consuming, restaurants, hospitality, all of that has been hit the hardest and the worst, and most unfortunately has not received any attention. So I think that this is, like a slowly unraveling sort of nightmare, but unravel it will. And I think it's going to show up a lot of wounds for a lot of different sectors.
Right. And I think I'll come to Sukirat ji next. But one little thing about what we are doing. So I haven't really introduced Ashwini sir yet, because I'm going to give him some special attention, because all of these things that people are saying will be related to what he's going to do. So Sukirat ji, if you can go on. So Sukirat ji, what is the situation like in Punjab, and in your experience, you said you had a lot of observations?
Well, you see, I think we are all observing, but I'll start from here that I would not like to repeat what Mitali has already very nicely and exhaustively explained. I'll just try to say it more in a layperson's terms and add one more thing to it. She's actually pointed it out that as compared to our peers, we are having a bad time, and we are probably going to have worse time too. And I concur with her. You see, the thing is that, as we all know and we'll be talking about, is even before COVID hit us, the COVID restrictions hit us, economy was doing badly already. You see, now actually COVID is going to be a shield to brush under the carpet many things which were not going right with the economy earlier. But besides that, strictly speaking, I'm not even touching economy here. The way this lockdown was brought in, that in itself was very, very ill thought out. And I will, if you permit me, I'll bring it slightly towards my own profession also, which is concerned with journalism. You see, the thing is that the way, in the dramatic manner, as our government, or rather the leader, is prone to make these 4-hour in advance announcements, it created a lot of panic. Now, you see, the first 21 days, I don't know about rest of India, and I'll hear it from other friends, how it was there. But you see, here a lot of panic was created, and the first 21 days was as if, by the way, I have the figure for Punjab, we had only one known case in 67, one death in 67 cases on the 21st. In spite of that, you see the panic, the way it was created, people started blocking their roads. You would not see anybody stepping out, and nothing was available 4 or 5 days. And then all this rumor mongering started. People stopped touching the newspapers, because you see, everybody was worried that any surface you touch, it's going to. And I'm sure that it has happened in other parts of India also. The circulation of newspapers.
Yeah, it has collapsed
drastically. It's completely collapsed.
Yeah.
Now, you see, we are not going to, I'm not looking into that. What you see, the thing is, because the economy is doing badly, newspapers are not going to have that kind of a revenue from the advertisement. That's a separate issue altogether. Yeah. But you see, part of theirs comes from their subscription, and people are not even letting. And you see, the corollary of that is that the hawkers didn't have a job. I know that my hawker started selling vegetables, and this is just an example. Yeah. You see, there are many examples. So what I'm saying is that we will be talking about it, but I think that a main point here is of course, nobody could foresee that this sort of situation is there, but there are ways of dealing with it. And you see now, yeah, and also the thing is that just before I leave, I will point out another thing also. No state government was consulted before starting the lockdown, but soon after that, there is this thing now. Chief ministers should tell us how do we start unlock, and now you see the ball is in the states' courts.
Yeah.
Now the center is sitting and saying, do this, do this, do this. You took out the genie out of the bottle, and you want everybody else to put it back. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing that you brought up. So like if you look at it as a microcosm, like he gave the example of his newspaper delivery man who started selling vegetables, and we can't even imagine the kind of impact this has had on like say smaller businesses or even like hawkers and vegetable vendors, and we look at like giant auto sale industries and all of those things, but as Dr. Ashwini will actually later point out as well, Manrega is one thing that we should look at, which we aren't looking at. I think I'll bring in Prerna here. Prerna, can you also enlighten us on basically how do we sort of judge this situation? Like what is the thing that we should look at to actually figure out how we are doing economically?
So maybe what I can do is maybe not take a step back.
Yeah.
And because of the kind of work we do, so we work on the ground. A lot of our work is in rural, remote parts of the country. So we have some sense of what's happening on that front. Then we work with a lot of multilaterals and CSR guys and funders. So we know what's happened to that body of money.
Yeah.
And then we compile all of this data and then send it off to decision makers and policy makers and guys with money so they can deploy funds, right? So I'm in this spot where as a young firm, I have some sense of what's happening on the ground, right? And I'll try and divide, I think, my comments into maybe 3 buckets. I'd like to quickly talk about maybe what's happening in agriculture. I'd like to quickly get into what's happening with women's employment, and then just briefly touch upon, what's happened to education. And most of what I'll be speaking on will be to do with the rural economy, because that's a space I understand a little bit better, right? Yeah. So, and again, I'll be very specific. So if I just get into numbers, the ILO is saying that COVID-19, in reference to India, has the potential of pushing about 400 million Indians into abject poverty. That's about a third of your country. That's 400 million people, right?
Wow.
India, even today, employs...
Into abject poverty.
Abject poverty, though, and I'm quoting ILO. India still employs about 42% of the workforce is still agriculture, even though it's just 18% of GDP. And year on year, the number of people employed in agriculture is actually going up, even though it's one of the more inefficient sectors in the country right now. If you also get into how reverse migration, and what do we mean by reverse migration? People from smaller towns, rural areas, who came into the cities in search of work, livelihoods, dreams, all of that. Now that they've been pushed outside, owing to different reasons, they've lost jobs. Now that they've gone back to their own set of villages, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to the kind of pressure that will be built up for these people who've come back to these villages? And mind you, it's also, in India, I think one of the bigger problems has been that a lot of people working in agriculture had very small, inefficient land holdings.
Yeah.
And it was mostly these guys who came in search of jobs, who were really poor, and now that they've gone back and, there's a lot of stigma attached to it, contamination, COVID-19, being segregated, all of that, right? I think the second thing is that we're all very cognizant of is that we're still a pretty informal economy. So if you think about it, 70% of people in the workforce, 70% of people, I will repeat this number, do not have contracts. They don't have, they don't have contracts with the firms they work in, and about 40% of them can't seek official leave. So if I go back, I lose my job, right? That's how bad it is in this country. And it's going to be much worse for women. It's already much worse for women, right? So Ashwini Deshpande's research says that 4 of 10 women who were working in India since March have already lost their jobs. 4 of 10 women. Wow. Women predominantly work in education, and schools have been shut. Manufacturing sector, I think Mitali commented on that, so I won't go there. There's a lot of work in health. We know what's happening there. But there's a big subset of women who actually work as domestic help. And we all know that, again, there's no notice period when it comes to our domestic help, gardeners, electrician, plumber, maid, help, drivers, all of that. A lot of people were just sent home. I think initially people held on or held off for a couple of weeks. They said, "Aap ghar nahi aa sakte," but then everybody was like, no can do, right? So women will bear the brunt of COVID-19. Again, nothing to be proud of. India, I think, is about 122 of 162 countries when it comes to the United Nations Gender Inequality Index, which basically means we are a little bit better than some of the Arab countries, a little bit better than some of the war-torn countries and countries with civil unrest. And what COVID-19 has done is push us further down, right? I mean, and my point is, Meghnad, even somebody who's fairly plugged into the system, we have no sense right now of how bad it is. My other comment is, on education, and I think we've all seen a lot of articles floating around.
Prerna, I'll come to you again for the education bit because I have to go to Dr. Ashwini as well. Because the last thing that you said about even if we are plugged in, we still have no idea what is going on outside. I think Dr. Ashwini is exactly working on that. So I think it would be interesting to bring him here. Dr. Ashwini, first, please briefly introduce yourself and then we can move on to your presentation. Before we begin, I would like to tell the audience what this is about, just give a little bit of context. This is a project by ISB, which I think is a very interesting sort of tool that they are giving to the public at large, primarily journalists, but just public at large. All the data that we get on economic aspects, on population, on different sort of indicators which we use to judge the economy are usually old. Like they're like, if not like a month old, that's like a great ideal case scenario. It would be like years old, like 3 saal pehle ka unemployment data milega, like sometimes like Manrega I think is the only one that is regularly updated, and Aadhaar authentications now. But other than that, most of them are just, collected at one point and then released it in like a statistical book somewhere hidden somewhere. What Dr. Ashwini's team is doing is they're trying to break this and they're trying to give us all real-time data. So, which is what he's going to talk about. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Meghnad.
Yes.
So I can just build on what you've already said.
Yes.
I am leading an initiative called Jumpstart India at ISB. As it's anchored in the Bharti Institute of Public Policy. The idea there is to put forward perspectives, but also support, assuming that the problem is too big to be left to governments to solve. The economy is not something that we can stay out of in whatever hat that we choose to wear, as an academic, as an intellectual, as a journalist, or as a common citizen. So the idea of Jumpstart India is to try and bring to bear non-government resources from students, from intellectuals, from scientists, to support the government in what they're doing, but also help them figure out what they're doing, because frankly, in many cases, they don't know. And they are perhaps too proud to admit.
Yes.
And it also helps generate a new culture where problem solving is not left to government and then blame sharing. It's our problem too. Not just your problem, as you are our government too. So this Jumpstart India at ISB involves students, faculty, works with government agencies in identifying problems. One of these problems that started well before and that we have been talking about is the availability of data in a format that is easy to consume. That is a problem. Of course, there are many other problems. Some of it is 3 years old and so on. Some of it is unbelievable. So there are clear trust issues. There are data that government releases I would not touch with a barge pole.
Yes.
There is also a lot of very good data, but it's so well hidden and so deeply buried that it's not because there is an evil genius trying to hide it. It's just people don't know how to make data available in a form that is easy to consume. And the government is just 20 years behind technology, no matter what they pretend. or so the India Data Portal brings public data together on one platform, and it seeks to achieve multiple objectives. One, of course, what we started with, which is to present data in a form that is easy to consume. You can interact with the data, you can visualize the data, you can download the visualization, you can download the table, and then use it in whichever way you want. You put it in your report, you put it in your news report, master's thesis, wherever it is. But the data becomes democratic. Everyone has access to the same data. And with all the warts that it comes with, of course.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's sold, sometimes it's at the state level, sometimes it's somewhat not very useful, but it's still there. The third point that we want to address through the India Data Portal is multiple data sets. And this is also something that the India Data Portal wants to work with journalists to encourage. Because when you look at news stories that use data, it's usually one data series. The article is on Narega, the article is on PDS, the article is on social security, pensions, article is on midday meals. It's actually when you look at all of these together that you get a sense of how the rural population is doing, how the informal economy is doing. And this is something that is very well established in more mature markets such as equity, for example, or debt. Right? That's where you have Sensex and NASDAQ and so on and so forth. The India Data Portal wants to develop that kind of lens where users of data begin to look at multiple data series and not just one data series.
Yeah.
Because the insights are greater.
Dr. Ashwini, can you give us examples of this? Like you were going to show it to us, right? So,
yes.
Yes. So I think it'll be
There
clearer
is
for.
going to be a show and tell.
It'll be clearer for the audiences if you actually show them that the kind of work, the indicators that you have.
Yes, and that is where I'm going next.
Yes.
As soon as, okay, you can see my screen. It is the India Data Portal landing page that first allows you to search, and you can type a search query and it will show up whatever data sets match to it. And it already has data sets, and the number of data sets are increasing. We are adding new data sets on a weekly and hopefully soon daily basis, because there's a lot of data that can be put there, especially when you think about looking at multiple data sets together. So if you want to find one data, it is there. If it is not there, please let us know and we will be very happy to try and put it there. That is the objective of the exercise. The second part here that sort of beyond the big picture objectives is to reach out to journalists who are now, compared to even 10 years ago, who are now much more constrained for time from their editors in terms of writing a story and or trying to hunt down the data that is necessary, as well as making it available in vernacular language. And this is something that we found in conversations with journalists across India in multiple languages, that they have specific problems in access to data. And the India Data Portal is now available in multiple languages, and the number of languages will increase in proportion to the number of partnerships that we can develop. And we are an open forum. We welcome all partners who wish to and can and willing and able to contribute to developing the portal in a new language that does not exist so far. Right. So any Indian language is open. The third point, and this is especially pertinent to our panel, is this new tab that we have developed on the top, Jumpstart India at ISB, which is where we are putting together data sets that have three attributes. One, they are in near real time, so that we know exactly what is happening as close to today as possible, and pretty close, so not 6 months ago and not last year. The second is high frequency. Similar to what equity markets do, we need to get at daily data and multiple series of daily data to try and understand patterns, and not just one data series, not just one stock, but multiple stocks, multiple data series from different sectors, from different sources. And the third there, very important component is high resolution. So we should not just look at macroeconomic indicators at the India level, which is often what we see, that employment rate in India is going up and down. And when you think of 400 million people who are now vulnerable to falling into poverty, and many of them were already poor 20 years ago in the last generation, and they've worked hard to get out of poverty and now being forced back again. All India data hides so much. So what we want is high resolution data, at least as high as possible, and certainly higher than just a national number. So we want to go down in many data series to state level, to district level, to hopefully panchayat level and city level. So this is what the data portal looks like. It has several data sets that are at a daily transaction. Aadhaar, for example, which can show you authentications of 3 different kinds. Of great interest perhaps is air quality data that is available at the city level as well. And one can zoom deeper down into each of these data sets. So if you want to look at Madhya Pradesh, you can look at different cities in Madhya Pradesh in terms of air quality, and so on. Some of these are daily, but many of these, with the switch on the top left that you can see, are available at the monthly level. That is because of the nature of the data and perhaps also the nature of the data series. Some things are only available at a monthly cadence, but still, because they are near real time, we do get a lot of insights from looking at it together. And that is one of the things that the data allows. For example, the number of registered companies, for example, you can clearly see a dip that happened during February and March. But like Sukirat and many of the other panelists have said, this also shows that the problem had already started well before March. So some of these indicators tell us that we can't lay all the blame on COVID, and it makes it easier for us to check what was happening if we also compare it to what were the numbers last year. And we are adding these numbers as we go, and we really welcome suggestions and, of course, offers of collaborations with help, with translation, with adding more data sets, with suggestions for data and data sources that allow users to make these conclusions themselves instead of consuming it from the government. So that we co-produce knowledge about what is happening to the economy and have a conversation about solutions and about the direction of the economy that is informed by data that anyone can consume. Yes,
Dr. Ashwini, thank you. And I have to take a lot of questions now, if that's okay.
Yes.
So panelists can also ask questions, but before that, I would like to take some audience questions because there are a lot of them and people are waiting. I hope you guys don't mind. And also I'll direct some of the questions to you as well, depending on your area of expertise, etc. Or if you want to just answer it, I will let you answer it. I think one very interesting question, which I would directly like to throw at Mitali. Just a second. Wait, I saw a question about how the corporates are dealing with this COVID situation, and is it any different from the government? Like strategy-wise, how do you see companies and corporates sort of dealing with the economic situation?
So Meghnad, I think that's a very
that's a question by Shantanu. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Shantanu. I think that's a very wide question because it's really different for different sectors. For example, a lot of technology heavy firms that live, right here in our neighborhood in Gurgaon have told their employees that it's going to be work from home right up till December. They have the luxury to do that. So I think we have to be cognizant of that fact, and they represent a very small percentage of India's firms. You then have the manufacturing sector, and it's interesting you asked that because, I was chatting with Naushad Forbes, and he made the point that for manufacturing firms to put in COVID restrictions is actually far simpler. Manufacturing companies understand systems and processes. They understand social distancing. They understand working in shifts. This comes easily to them. This is much more difficult in the retail sector, where you're encouraging people to go to malls. You want them to touch and feel the fabric of cloth. You want them to sit down and have a coffee. It's not going to be that easy for them, in terms of getting their employees back and getting business back. And then there's the huge universe that we tend to club as MSME. It's a broad term, but this is really the heartbeat of India. This is the space that's been hit the hardest. This is the space that is really struggling to get back on its feet, because
Right.
blow number one was demonetization. Then came the economic slowdown. They hadn't recovered from that. And now they have this crisis where, just extending a 5 lakh bank loan to them is not going to help. Meghnad, I just wanted to add a little bit of context, if I may,
Yeah.
to the points that were made about MG Narega, because I
Yeah.
know there's so much, talk about that in the papers. And there's 3 quick points I want to make. As Prerna pointed out, on gender, for women, the MG Narega participation has hit an 8-year low. Basically, there's so many more men who want to do this work, so women are being elbowed out of these jobs. Number 2, please consider the fact that many of these people are, this is a step down for them, not a step up. They have come back from urban jobs where they were earning far more and had a consistent income, but now they're working on this 100 working days, a year kind of phenomenon, and getting between 1,000 to 1,300 rupees depending on which state you're. And the third most important fact, Meghnad, is that you always send your prime candidate to town because this is the guy or this is the woman who's going to send money back home. Expatriation of cash is a huge source of rural income, and
Right.
that's been snapped. So, we may talk about agriculture doing well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, at a household level, people are living better lives because of that.
That's true. It's very interesting. I think the data portal also has Manrega data, right? So if people want to keep a track of Manrega, you can go there and look at it. Manrega, I think, is one scheme that actually gives you real-time data to a level where you know how many people have gone to work under that scheme today, and they will put it out on a website. So the point being that the usual assumption is that if there are high number of people going for this scheme, which means that they're not getting any other employment which will pay them more, so therefore it's a bad thing that more people are availing this scheme. That is the usual assumption there. So you can track that. I'm going to ask this question for both Paojel and Sukirat, because this is a very important one. What options are data journalists left with when the government refuses to or delay sharing of data? Also, between government and third-party data pertaining to the same subject, which should be treated with more authority. I'll go to Paojel first, because this is a very important question, because Dr. Ashwini also pointed out that I think this works on the data that is available. But what if the government is just not giving you data, like unemployment or whatever? What do you do then?
I must say that there is a problem that we've been facing from the government, state or central otherwise. The data that we want, that has never been given to us willingly. And we have to apply even to the RTI. For concern sectors like health, how much money is going on there, how much money is being utilized, education, all the other infrastructure, whatever, including the home department. So the data that we are generally interested in is hardly given to us just like that. And we have to fight for it, and we have our own means to get that data. But it's very hard to just like, it's not a piece of cake that we want, that they are not just going to give it to us. But it was very interesting to hear about Mr. Ashwini, the database that he has worked on. I hope it is some more on the Northeast, also on Manipur. But some of the data states for journalists, the journalists face now is that particular information that we seek is not given to us at the moment.
Sukirat sir, do you want to add to this? What happens when the government is not giving data, and is there a way to still get it?
Well, you see, there are two things. First of all, personally speaking, as I said right in the beginning, I'm not an economic journalist, but at the same time, to write on anything, I need a certain directional data. It's not that I need specific figures. You see, now from that angle, unfortunately, one always takes with a little pinch of salt the data that any government dishes out, because it's a bit of a propaganda element in that. But unfortunately, for the past 5 or 6 years, not only I can say for other people also, people have completely stopped believing what the government dishes out. Because, and that's where you see, I will take Ashwini's name because he's right there with us, that people like Ashwini and such portals have become very important. In fact, things have come to such a pass that I as an active journalist also, I'm no longer watching TV. So you see, one has to access data through non-government channels in any case, and also access, thanks to the internet, data which is actually coming via other people who are not even in India, you know. So that is one thing. So, but at the same time, I think that this process should go on, because sooner or later, with all the bravado also, the government has to realize, and they start realizing, because you see, the problem with our current government, leave aside politics, is that you see, when there is a problem, the first way to solve the problem is that you acknowledge that there is a problem.
Right.
They never start from there. Because they don't start from there, we need more and more people like Ashwini and this portal who can produce that data and then see it. And then, the bravado will still be there because this is how they behave. But somewhere, you see, yesterday they had the GST meeting. Now she has given 7 days to chief ministers for states. And let's see what happens. Because you see, there are going to be very many problems in this GST thing also.
Right.
Basically, it's not strictly my field, but what I feel is that, look, as it is after the GST, there were only 3 things that were totally left actually under the control of the states, which was alcohol, petrol, and I think stamp duty. Stamp duty, because I noticed that Maharashtra has decreased it to 2% yesterday. Now you see, in this given situation, how much leeway you have there too. You see, when there is generally everything is in doldrums, how much more petrol can you sell? Actually, people are not even traveling due to lockdown and other reasons. Alcohol, as I don't even have to go there, how much can you, of course, it's in a way, people who drink, they're ready to pay for it, but how many people can pay that kind of thing? Push comes shove, I think some people who were used to getting IMFL kind of liquor will go start using hooch, if it goes very much up. And the same is about stamp duty. So what I'm saying is that data is important, but data coming from the government, it's either non-existent or it's not believable.
I have a question. I have a question which related question which I wanted to ask Prerna here. Is there any data around rural finance to look at how financial support work during the unlock to support farmers? So Prerna, do you have an answer for that? This is a question by Satya.
Thank you, Satya. I don't really have ad nauseum an answer for you there, but if I can just respond to what's been discussed about government data being believable or not. So Sukirat ji, companies such as mine wouldn't exist if all of us could simply download government data sets and run with it. So we primarily do data collection, and technically we do it for a lot of multilaterals. So it's money that the government's given to multilaterals. Then we come back and we tell them whether their policies are working or not. So, but I like to adapt or adopt a very glass half full kind of an approach. Of course, India is such an ocean which can neither be completely measured nor be ever fixed. But what I do appreciate with respect to what's currently happening is that there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of effort in terms of trying to measure everything that has gone wrong. I will take a few examples of the kind of work I'm doing. I'm doing a massive study for a big multilateral which has been commissioned by the government of India to try and understand how learning outcomes have suffered across multiple states. And this is primarily owing to the fact that we're all triumphing and saying, oh, digital education, wonderful. And, of course.
Is this like the Asar survey?
No, I'm not doing that, and I'm not going to get into names, but the point is, never take names. Never take names when you're talking to Newslaundry. Never do that.
We can take names because public pays, public is served. We don't care.
When Chatham House rules, then we take names, Meghnad. Today we don't. No, but the point is that the larger goal of the study is that for all kids from really poorer backgrounds, unke ghar pe, if they have one phone, do they even get access to that phone? What kind of a show will they see on that phone? Do they have internet on that phone? In the Northeast, internet is so bad. In fact, we just finished doing something in Nagaland, and we couldn't do any video-based surveys because there was no internet, and it doesn't work. So, but what the government is saying that, let's prepare for the next unforeseen circumstance or perhaps another disastrous situation as and when it may arrive. So guys, can you come back to us with information on how we improve digital infrastructure and how we support these edtech startups, right? So
Prerna, this is very interesting.
Meghnad, I just wanted to very quickly for a second jump in on this point about data. It's like it's a journalism 101 course, right, Meghnad? When half the room tells you it's raining and the other half tells you it's not raining, what do? And the answer is you open the bloody window and look out and see if it's raining or not. So, I mean, I think anecdotal evidence is very important for journalists and data watchers to be talking about this. I mean, we don't need inflation data to tell us that food and vegetables are getting extremely expensive on a weekly basis. True. But I think that the point that, was made by Sukirat is spot on. It's loss of faith. It's not about, this is what the private data says and this is what the public data says, but on a serial basis, when you keep restating your base year for calculating your GDP, after a while, as an economy watcher, I'm going to be like, you know what, forget it. It doesn't make any sense anymore. So I think loss of faith in this whole data conversation is probably the most sort of important factor right now.
It's very interesting how you talk about loss of faith. So to take your example again, if half of the room says that, it's raining and half of the say not raining, even if I open the window and the people who say that it's not raining and they're actually the ones winning the election, so it's not raining.
Correct.
I mean, it's not raining anymore.
Yeah, at least as a journalist, I know the truth.
What
so
truth?
I know that half the room is a monkey.
What truth are you talking about? What
making a monkey of me.
No, but
Can I come in?
Sorry. Ashwini sir, I'll take your comments and then we have to end this as well. We have a lot of more questions, but if I may request also, meanwhile, while Dr. Ashwini gives his last comments, can you leave your contact details or wherever people can talk to you in the chat there, so that, if they have any questions or if you want to talk to them, you can just go to their Twitter or email or whatever you want. Please leave your details on the chat. Yes, Dr. Ashwini.
I was building on the faith in the data ecosystem. What we have also seen is a transformation that is somewhat unnoticed, although it is visible, which is from a pretty archaic distinction between primary and secondary data to what we now have is transactional data. So the NREGA data that you see on the Ministry of Rural Development website is very hard to fudge. They can take the server down or they will have to show the data because the data cannot be fudged. It is being fed into a digital architecture and shows up on the server. And that is how it is happening with the UIDAI, with fertilizer sales, because each POS machine is assigned to a dealer, to a retailer. And every transaction that is made on that POS is automatically displayed on the central server.
So it's real time. So there is no human intervention there.
There is some human intervention, but it cannot be fudged because it is a very distributed network.
Right.
That is the nature of new data. So there are ways in which we can arbitrate, and it is possible for the NSSO consumption survey results to not be released. Because it is a face-to-face survey and there are all kinds of things that happen between the survey and the final results. But we are now in a new world where data on the economy is being recorded through these transactions at these Paytm machines or whatever other ways in which it is recorded, which cannot be fudged because it's a distributed network.
Yes.
And we need to move away from this survey type of results, which were very unreliable even to begin with.
Yeah.
It's not like when the data was being released in real time or in good time, the surveys were actually reliable.
Yeah.
Let us not fool ourselves.
Yeah.
So now at least we have data and we know that whatever we see is what we get. We can construct a different way of looking at data and the journalism based on that data.
And And thank you so much, everyone, for doing this. I have one last tip for the audience if you want to look at data. Of course, you can go to indiadataportal.com. I have one more thing, which is like this hidden gem which people don't know about much. Go to the Lok Sabha website, go to the questions, and then search for anything you want. The amount of data that you will get on a regular basis, which the government themselves have given to the parliament, is crazy. Right? They have actually given data on whether there were UFO sightings, whether the government is subsidizing goat milk, and things like that as well. So you can imagine what kind of stuff they like, realistically good stuff they have answered there as well. Take a look at that. And Rajya Sabha has another portal, so that is another thing. So that is one source you can also use to get your data. Now the parliament isn't in session, but you can get it till like March, February tak abhi. But other than that, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ashwini, for coming up with this wonderful data portal. And thank you, Paojel. Thank you, Mitali. Thank you, Prerna. And thank you, Sukirat ji, for having this wonderful discussion with us.
Thank you, Meghnad.
Thank you,
It was great to
Meghnad.
have
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, audiences, for watching this. And there were quite a few people. So great done, guys. Great job.